I will record it again and send it out. I hate that we were cut off. But anyways, we were talking about like reasonable suspicion versus probable cause. And I mean, that has something to do with students' rights, but that isn't necessarily what have been reading about. But you have to remember, school authorities have a lot of freedoms. So, you know, I have students that drive to school. They say, you can't search my car. Even if it's off campus, I can search their car because of that danger, that worry, that imminent threat. A police officer can't unless we have pretty good reason to believe that something is in that car that is dangerous, that might come onto campus. If it's on campus, you know, they have the same rights. The police officers have the same authority to be able to search that car, but a lot of times police officers will use school officials to do that, to search the car, to search a locker, so that they don't have to answer in court as to why did you do that, especially if it's something that a student said that, hey, you know, Rebecca has this, because then you get into the validity of the child's response, the child's word for things, that kind of stuff. So actually, police officers are not even allowed to direct school administrators like where to search, because then that is considered a probable cause search. So what we used to do when I was here at a high school before is we had a police officer would take us out during work days and show us all of the places to search cars, where people hide things. And we kind of had our little mental checklist of, you got to look in the glove box, you got to look here, you got to pull up the carpet on the sides, you got to see if the consoles, you know, and the door frames come away easily, because that's where a lot of people hide things. You got to go up under the front console, especially in older cars that don't have that sleek part, because that's where people will hide their money, up under there.
Question. The school administrator is allowed to search that student property, car, and there's damage done within the process of searching. Who is liable?
Well, that is a great question. I think any attorney would say their client is not liable. So the student's attorney would say their client's not liable. The school attorney would say their client's not liable. And that's why, as a school administrator, when you're searching cars and you are pulling apart cars, with me, if you put a good tug on your car console, it's not going to pop off unless it's used to popping off. You know, we weren't taking the little hook things that you use to pull things up. We weren't using that to pull up the carpet. If they're using that to hide something, it'll pop up pretty quickly. So we and that's a part of that practice, is you got to know when you're damaging something. We don't have the right, like you see on TV or even in real life, where police go and just trash things. It brings up a good question too of the policy in our school is, if a student has their cell phone out when they're not supposed to, the teacher takes it and then turns it into the office for either the student to pick it up or a parent to pick it up. Well, what if the cell phone is lost in the process? Who's responsible?
The student, because it's a case where the cell phone should be placed within safety, I guess, not visible on campus, if it's against the policy. If that's in the student.
Yeah, we tell them their locker. You know, it goes in your locker. Then if your locker is broken into, then now we have a crime of kind of breaking and entering. But there have been situations where teachers have taken cell phones to turn into the office, have not secured that cell phone, and the teacher has had to pay for the replacement of that cell phone. And I agree with you, Clive. It's that student's responsibility. They weren't following the policy.
Right.
But as a school administrator, or even as a teacher, you have to be careful when you take something into custody, that you have to lock it up. You know, it's sort of like if I take if a person's purse is left behind, they neglected to get their purse. But if it's in my custody and they say there was $5 in there, yes, you would like to say, look, I'm a school administrator. I have access to a lot of things. I'm not going to steal. But there's a little bit of a cover. Hey, there's a little bit of a cover your backside when it comes to being a school administrator, when you are seizing different items from students. Like if somebody says, here, Dr. Wilson, I found this wallet. I will say, okay, hold on, come here. Let's look through the wallet and let's agree what's in this wallet. And usually would have another adult with me too. Just saying, we all agree when it's put into my custody, there was only $5. Because what if somebody took the wallet, stole the money out of it, ditched it, when it got to me, it didn't have any money in it. Somebody could say, well, how do we know she didn't take it? Which you would love to say people are going to believe you because you are a school administrator, you're an upstanding citizen, you're a public official, but let's be realistic. There's some cover your backside that has to occur. Like if you are searching somebody, you always want a witness. As a female, I will search male students if I do not have a male available, but I will have a witness. When I go into pockets, like in a female's pocket, I'll just stick my hand in the pocket and I don't pay attention to like which way my hand's going. But if I'm searching a male, instead of going into their front pocket, I don't have pockets today, otherwise I'd show you, but if this is the pocket, instead of going into their pocket where my palm is going to be on the inside, I will turn my hand around to where my palm is on the outside. And a lot of times I'll have the student pull their pants kind of away from their waist as much as they can. Same on the back side. If this is the pocket, I will stick my hand where my palm is not going to caress the bottom, to where my palm will be outside, and kind of pull at the waist away so that nobody says I'm trying to feel them up. And that can be same gender or even opposite gender. We do have a male assistant principal, and he's like, I'm not going to search a girl. And I would agree. I would agree that men need to protect themselves a little more than women. But in this day and age, everybody needs to protect their backside, because no longer is it innocent until proven guilty. Especially when it comes to like, hey, she was trying to cop a feel. And that's just reality. My male assistant principal really struggles to tell girls that their skirts are too short. He will bring them to us. And that's fine. I want to protect him as much as possible. Mm-hmm. I will not, students hug, even in high school, they hug. I'm a female. I will not hug chest to chest. I will do the side hug. Because when I worked in a middle school for all those years, guess where their face was? And they're hormonal boys. I'm going to protect me too. And don't want somebody say, oh, she just grabbed my face and stuck it in her chest. We would do the little side hug. Yeah, honey, I appreciate seeing you today. But not the front hug. Well, high school boys are taller, most of them, but still, you don't necessarily want to front hug, or you can bend and kind of hug and shoulders touch. And that's just is that sounding paranoid? It can a little bit, but a part of being a school administrator is protecting that backside. You don't want you don't want to be fighting for your reputation. So if I can, I will not search a boy. I'm allowed to walk in the boys' bathroom anytime I want. I need to have a reason. And so there have been times that I've heard a fight going on in the boys' bathroom. And all I will say is, I'm coming in, you better put anything away you don't want me to see. As I'm rushing in. Had boys skipping, and I know they're hiding in the boys' bathroom. And I'll say, I'm coming in, you better put anything away you don't want me to see. Because we have that right for safety. Now, if it's urgent, I'll go on in. If it's not urgent, I'll try to get a male teacher to go in, or a male security officer or something like that. Because you also I just don't go walking into the boys' bathroom. But like if we hear that a fight's going on in there, we're going in regardless, because that is our obligation and that is our responsibility. So you know, there is that fine line. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the other thing that you need to find out is, how does your county want you to handle it? How does your county, if you are a male administrator, how does your county want you to handle going into the girls' bathroom or searching a girl? Because there are some counties that will say a male does not touch a female student. Part of me says that that's against our duty and responsibility for a safe and orderly functioning of a school.
I stay away from girl fights. If there's two girls involved in a fight, I'm the last person to get in between.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just for my safety.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love for them to stop, but I'd rather have a female teacher or an administrator get between those two girls.
You know what a lot of our males do is they will shove the girl away rather than grab. And actually, my male assistant principal was shoving a girl out of a fight rather than grabbing her. Well, somebody had spilled a drink in the melee, and the girl hit the spill and went sliding and tumbling. And her mom tried to come back and say, you know, it's because he shoved her out of the fight. In North Carolina, in the assault clause, there actually is a clause for school administrators. This is something to the effect of reasonable force in keeping with a safe and orderly movement of a school or something along those lines. Now, again, those are all subjective words. So, you know, I'll grab boys in a fight. My male assistant principal, if he can't like shove away or get in between, he will grab, but you can tell he's very cautious. He'll kind of be like, so he can grab around the waist and not necessarily grab something that he shouldn't be grabbing. But again, I don't want you to think that it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't, but it's kind of that way because you have an obligation to break it up. But you also don't want to be accused of using unreasonable force. Right, or inappropriate. I mean, I've been on the ground trying to break girls up. Girl fights are the worst, by the way. Just the worst. I mean, I've been on the ground rolling around with girl fights trying to break them apart to where I finally was able to get them apart and like body slammed a girl on the cafeteria table and was laying on her. And I thought, Lord have mercy, this is caught on camera. Hopefully, at one point in time, I was trying to break up a girl fight again, and a boy came and went swinging towards a girl and ended up hitting me, and they have me on camera literally tie-bowing this boy against the wall because my hands were tied up, and so I just used my foot and just kicked him off to the wall, and it's on camera, and I'm thinking, oh no! But there's also that safety. You can't just stand by and watch people fight. That's the unfortunate part. And that's where your resource officer comes in. Look, a resource officer will get in there and break up a fight in a skinny minute. So, you know, there is that fine line as an administrator. My best advice is you got to cover your backside, but you also have to make sure you do your job. And how do you do that? It's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of observing. It's a lot of asking. So how do you handle this situation? But when like my male AP comes to me and says, hey, I this girl's skirt's way too short, one of the 4 females will go and say something because you just don't want to put him in that situation. Let's talk about, just to kind of get back, let's talk about free speech when it comes to written expression, and that is not necessarily on the internet or social media right now. It's maybe in like school newspapers, and we can talk about the yearbook article that I sent you. So if you've ever worked in a high school, or that it's usually high school where you collect senior quotes, some other schools will also collect information from students, or even if it's if you have a yearbook staff that includes students and they write for the yearbook. Schools have that ability to use some editorial censorship, I guess, because it is still a part of the school. So if they're for the school newspaper, if they are for yearbook, we have like where students can submit poems and different pieces of written expression, and we have a periodical that goes out with that. We have editorial rights. We have censorship, and that is a horrible word to use, but that's probably the most appropriate. But it has to be reasonable. So the article that I sent you was about the charter school that's right down the road, and it's about where they censored students' yearbook quotes. Now, I will say, when we collect our student yearbook quotes, there's a big disclaimer that says we have the right to publish, not publish, to choose what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. And I mean, I'm 42 years old. I don't think I'm that old, but I had a great education in Urban Dictionary looking at yearbook quotes. And I had to read every single one of them. And I did not know that there's this common thing that says, I would like to thank, insert school name, for the following. And there are 7 adjectives that if you take the first letter out of each of those adjectives, it spells the F word and then you. So I had to be very well versed in all of that. So what I did is I sat down a young teacher and said, all right, go through these senior quotes with me. And there was a lot of education there, to the point where we're ready to get rid of senior quotes. Nobody says you have to have senior quotes in a yearbook. So from the Piedmont Charter School, these 2 students claimed that the school censored and took away their freedom of speech. Now, it was a school-produced product, right? So the school has the ability. There were some errors, in my opinion. First of all, their yearbook quotes were approved by the yearbook advisor and by the principal. They went to print. It was when the yearbooks were delivered to the school and ready to be distributed to students, and there's a little bit of some myths, not what was in the news article, that they actually were distributed to students, collected back, distributed to students, collected back again, where the yearbook staff went through with a permanent black marker and marked out their quotes. Now, that's a little too late, in my opinion. Every now and then you miss some things. I mean, being new to this school, the yearbook advisor did not realize that I wanted to put my final stamp of approval on the yearbook before it went to print, and sat there with the old-fashioned magnifying glass to make sure there's not a middle finger, there's not, it was the movie Indecent Exposure where the legs were a little too far out moments, that sort of thing, because sometimes it just catches the wrong angle at a person at a wrong time, and then you're showing some bits that you don't want to show. So, you know, you need to catch it, and as the principal, or if it's assigned to you as a duty from the principal, when you're an administrator, you need to make sure that you give that final stamp of approval before it goes to print. You need to catch things before they go to print, like a newspaper.
Can the school administrator provide a guideline for students to follow?
You can, but then you're kind of controlling it. You know, if you give them like a template, you know, again, it has to be reasonable. So we don't want like Mad Libs where you fill in the blank. I mean, the school can do a lot of things, because it is your production. It belongs to you. But you either in my opinion, you do a disclaimer or you don't do it at all. I'll give you another example. We had a student that was a senior that was killed in a car accident in January, right before the yearbook went to print. And he was killed in a car accident because he was driving too fast in his Mustang, which was his favorite car. Well, the yearbook teacher came to me immediately and said, we need to talk about his senior quote, because it talked about how he loves to drive fast in his Mustang. And do you include that? Those were his words, but that's also how he passed away. And we decided that it was not inappropriate enough. It was not going to cause a material disruption to censor that. And so we allowed that to be printed. And we were worried at the backlash that would come to it. So, you can give them a template. You can say, we always say, don't put anything inappropriate. But guess what? Kids are kids. They're going to say, okay, old lady, let's see if we can pull one over on you. The first one that I found, I just went to Google and started typing in their senior quotes, and it was lyrics to a song that they had really left out the inappropriate language, but it was just leaving out the cuss words. Well, that's basically publishing the lyric. It was Urban Dictionary really helped because it was almost like the clean version of something really grotesque, sexual in nature, something. So in this situation, the two quotes were, did you know that Gandhi was racist? And you're graduating early because we don't want you here for a full year. Are those are those inappropriate in any way? Unless you are a Gandhi fan or not a Gandhi fan, I don't think there's anything wrong with those quotes. One of my students submitted, it's 3:12 a.m. on the day senior quotes are due, and this pretty much sums up my high school career. Meaning they're last minute. It was their opinions. So what happened though, they were approved before it went to print. It was the day the yearbooks were being distributed that the head of school, which is like the boss over the print, saw it and said no. Said we are not going to do that. We're not going to have that. And she's the one that issued the censorship. So what the head of school issued was there was an editing oversight at the time the yearbook went to print. The decision was made to mark out the inappropriate comments instead of withholding the yearbooks from being distributed. The comments were not representative of the school's core values. Now, I didn't investigate what the school's core values are. If it was a Christian school and it said you had to live in, God's whatever, or the Catholic life, then maybe that Gandhi thing could be considered. But this is a public charter school. The problem, again, is, was it censorship? Was it appropriate censorship? Definitely was censorship, but was it appropriate? My opinion, and I only know what the newspaper reported. Based on those facts, I don't feel that it was appropriate. I feel that those quotes were fine to go into the yearbook, that they didn't say anything negative. It was a person's opinion about Gandhi. It was an inside joke between another girl and the principal. The questions that I have is, was it made clear to the students that their quotes could be withheld? You can no longer assume that their quotes will be withheld. You've got to cover your basis. Like in one of the case studies that we talked about, the website, the MySpace account, and you guys cracked me up too about laughing about MySpace and how old-fashioned MySpace is. But that social media account that the teacher had. And the question was the teacher notified of what the social media policy was? Well, you don't necessarily have to notify the teacher of social media policy because they should know the board policies that they're bound by their employment. But it is good practice, and I have our district social media policy in my handbook that the teachers have to sign off on. Again, there's a good paper trail. Yes, we talked about it. Yes, I informed them of it, because when it comes time to non-renewing, you can say, on August the 17th, we talked about it. This was done on February the 12th. They already knew. So it's always good with students to have that disclaimer that we have the right as a school to take out anything that we want to take out. So were they told that? But you don't necessarily have to tell them that. Nothing legally says you have to tell them that. And then my other question is, why were they approved at the school level? And then the head of school, I'm sorry, as the principal, I would be ticked beyond belief if my boss came in and said, no, I'm sorry. Now, I have to follow what my boss says. I mean, I'm not stupid. I need my job. But that would really undermine, in my opinion, it undermined the principal. And I know the principal well. I did not reach out to him and say, so what do you think about this? I actually know one of the girls. One of the girls went through middle school where I was. And she's a little bit of a, I'm going to ride on the edge, shock factor type. So what do you guys think about the censorship and the student yearbook quotes?
I think that for it to go out and then bring back, that was an error. People had already approved it. So that to me was a no-go. The moment the principal signed off on it, then that's the go right there.
Correct.
The Gandhi piece, it could be seen offensive to some people based on their beliefs and principles. So I can understand that, but the moment that it's getting to the principal office, that's where everything is saying it's fine to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to go. So I think that it should have been corrected there before go out and being published.
Well, and remember, my freedom of speech is not going to be stifled because you might get offended by it, unless it's going to cause an uproar. If I say I don't like fish, and I don't like to eat anything that swims, and some of you may say, "Oh my gosh, how can you live your life that way? I love fish." That's not, that's not a freedom of speech issue. Now, if we get into a fist fight over it, then it's another code of conduct issue. I would agree that unless through that public charter, and however you believe in public charters, I am a public non-charter educator, so I will just leave where you think my opinion is there. But charters could put things in place that say you have to fit under these moral values, but they're public. I mean, they get public funds. I don't think they are able to I don't think they're able to have guidelines like a private school, a parochial school, something like that. I believe they have to follow the same type of guidelines that we have to follow. But I agree that it could have been caught before it went to print. And when we looked at, go ahead, Colleen.
Yeah, I was going to say that also, even though it wasn't caught until after it was print, I think there was a bigger deal made by putting a permanent black marker over them, taking it from them, doing that, and then giving it back. At that point, you've made them more of student martyrs, and you've kind of made this more huge, a bigger issue than what it needed to be. I mean, they should have just either let it ride and then just see how it goes, or if it was that against the policy that much, then confiscate all the yearbooks, give them their money back, and it's done. But to give the yearbooks back with specifically two students, blocked out is just I mean, I don't know, if I'd been a student, I'd been really upset myself, or if I was the parent, I would have found that very offensive as the parent. Like, why would you do that to my kid?
When really it didn't say things like, it didn't say, Dr. Wilson is a B.
Yeah, right.
It was, the comments were rather harmless.
Right.
We had a school a couple years ago, a high school, where they had to collect all the yearbooks back, and it was because of a missed picture where a young lady was not sitting appropriately for a skirt and did not have appropriate undergarments, and it happened to be missed in their editing of the pictures, and it had a Paris Hilton moment. I'm showing my age. And they collected those yearbooks back, and with an X-Acto knife cut out that page and gave it back. To me, that is more appropriate than a Sharpie marker. And this was showing a girl's bits. It wasn't necessarily a speech thing. It was an editing issue. I thought it was pretty funny that they said that a lot of the kids, that these girls wrote in a lot of the kids' yearbooks, their comments. The kids just said, go ahead and rewrite it, which that can happen. This was May 19th. I haven't heard any more about it. There's not been anything more in the paper. I think it's probably just a dropped issue. The one girl that I know, her mom is not a very active mom and isn't going to step in and stand up for her daughter's rights. The mom used to tell me her daughter was a fantastic girl in middle school, and mom used to tell me, oh, she's horrible. No, if I had a whole school like her, we'd be just fine.
That's the one that's going to the Army?
That's the one that's going, the one that's wants to be a teacher. Coon.
Western Carolina.
Yeah, going to Western Carolina.
Yeah, Coon, Coon, Juliana. I had her through middle school. Her brother was a little bit of a pain, but she was a sweetheart. Very smart. But mom is not going to step in and support her children. She never has, which is unfortunate. So, a couple other things that are important about students' rights, about the internet privacy. Remember, if students are using school devices, there is no privacy. But that needs to be advertised. And I'm sure your district has some sort of policy about teachers, staff members, the school publishing pictures on social media. You have to get parent permission, all of that. If you don't know, you need to find that out. I thought it was interesting that they included drug testing and how it could be absolutely, the courts do not necessarily see it as a violation of a student's privacy, especially if there's reasonable suspicion that the student's under the influence of drugs. Now, we don't drug test our children. We do it for athletics, and it's random. But if somebody is under the influence, we used to have a policy where they could go get tested, and if they had a negative drug test, then their suspension would be rescinded. So, really the biggest thing to take from these chapters is, and about students' rights, is the clear and present danger, material disruption, and reasonable disruption. You've got to prove that their speech, whether it's nonverbal, verbal, written, is going to cause some sort of problem. You need to always consult your board policy, and there's nothing wrong with calling for help. When we were dealing with the Facebook Live video, I called my boss and said, let me talk you through this. What am I missing? What am I forgetting? All of that. Now we'll talk next time about Hell at Hand Middle School. The one thing that was that other article, one thing you also have to think about is, we've talked about individual student rights, but what about the rights of everybody else, of all the other kids that are in your building? Because that is equally as important.
So all the other kids' rights are the same as the kid that's causing that disruption.
Yep. Kind of odd, isn't it?
Not really.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, let's go back to that fight. The victim has as much rights as the person who is stating, I'm gonna beat you up. And I always say, as an administrator, I am the judge, the jury, the attorneys, the investigators, the police. I'm all of that. And I have to follow due process on both sides. You know, this Hell-at-Hand Middle School, there were some children who said their rights were being violated because it was unsafe for them to be there. But then there were rights of the people who were accused of making it unsafe. And one of the hardest decisions that I've ever had to make is, do I say Jimmy is making or taking away the education of other children because of his misbehavior bad enough that I need to remove him from this setting, whether through suspension, alternative placement, long term, so that everybody else can learn in that school, in that classroom? That is one of the hardest decisions. But as an administrator, you have to look at that, because you have to uphold the rights of everybody, the rights to that free and appropriate public education. So, you know, we've talked about individual student rights, but if you take Clive's earlier example of gangs, the gang members have rights, but so does everybody else. And you've got to protect all of those rights. And that's a little difficult to think about and to try to uphold.
Dr. Wilson?
Yeah.
It's showing that we have less than 3 minutes before.
I just saw that.
Okay.
I got to get this figured out, because 40 minutes won't happen, especially with 19 people if everybody logged on. That's crazy. Let me know what other questions you have. I'm going to look at my calendar, and it won't be this week. It'll probably be next week. We'll talk about teacher rights, and I hope to put 2 in there about tort liability. Hello. Those are really the 3 biggest topics, in my opinion, that you're faced with as an administrator. If you have some specific questions or anything that you want to talk about, let me know. And I'm going to figure out how we can get this Zoom so that we're not limited to 40 minutes.
Right.
Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Thanks for joining. Hello, honey.
Thank you. Say hi again.
Hello. So cute. All right. Have a good week. Don't work too hard. The rest of you enjoy your time if you're having summer break.
Same to
Oh,
you.
you're doing summer school. So,
Yeah.
All right, take care.
bye.
Bye.